So g'day and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to share with you the best budget gear for wildlife photography in 2023. Now I've enlisted the help of my beautiful subscribers. I asked them to submit their best images that they've taken on budget gear, and boy are there some awesome images in there. I've also taken a lot of images over the last 11 years with a lot of budget gear, and I'm also going to share those with you today. I honestly believe and hope that at the end of this video you'll have a better idea of what gear you could possibly buy to get into wildlife photography. So to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to break it down into three categories, and I'm going to use US prices because this is the easiest one for us all to sort of exchange in our heads. The first one is the sub $500 category, then sub 1,000, and finally sub 2,000. I know 2,000's not budget and it's not affordable for a lot of people. However, it allows us to sort of jump into the realms of the 1DX and the Sigma that we have here. It's worth exploring because you get a lot of value for your money in that price bracket. But usually the biggest hurdle for people to get into wildlife photography is they don't have the appropriate lens. They think they need to spend a fortune to get the focal length, and sometimes that's true. But in today's video, I'm going to show you that no, you don't need to spend a fortune. You can get really good lenses at affordable prices. Now, most of the gear I am talking about today is used gear. It's second-hand, and with that comes some inherent risks. However, we can also pick up a bargain. I've personally bought quite a few things second-hand. For me, if I'm buying a camera second-hand like I did with this 1DX, I'm checking the shutter count. How many photos has it actually taken? If it's well over 200,000, then it's obviously had a bit of a hard life. I'd also suggest them send you a raw file with the current date, the right EXIF data to make sure they do actually have that camera. And with lenses, obviously we want to ask, does it have any fungus? That's kind of mold inside the glass. Does the IS work? Get them to send you a photo of the front element, the rear element, you know, are there any major scratches, and get some photos, again, raw files. That'll make it a little bit easier. If you can inspect it before you buy it, even better. So let's kick off the budget category, the sub $500. What I want is a camera and a lens that can take sharp photos, it's got good quality and gives us some sort of reach. And you can definitely get that in this category. Now, I am mainly going to be talking about Canon and Nikon because that's what I'm comfortable with. I don't have a lot of experience with the other brands. Okay, so the first choice we have is, do we spend the money on the lens or the camera? In my opinion, I think the lens is the better investment. That's probably going to have a bigger impact than the camera in terms of image quality and sharpness and what have you. Alrighty, so let's start with the cameras, and I'll start with Nikon first. There's probably four good options here. We've got the D90, the D300, D300S, and the D7000. All good cameras that will take really good photos. I think the D300 series was targeted at wildlife. I think it was 12 megapixels, but it did have a higher frame rate, some more autofocus points, and it was just a lot bigger camera. And a good friend of mine, Gerard, actually used this camera extensively on the very affordable Nikon 300 f4 lens. And he managed to get these cracking flight shots of an Indian yellow-nosed albatross, check out that detail, and also a shy albatross banking in the sky. I'd be very happy with those shots, and that was taken with a pretty old camera. Now, I think the star there, as I mentioned, was the D7000. Now, that camera can take some pretty awesome shots. It had a new processor, it had better ISO performance. It's a really, really good camera. And Shirley Ann submitted this image taken of an endangered New Zealand rock wren. What a cool bird. This image is so sharp, it's fantastic. And that was taken with gear that costs around 420. So it's taken on that Nikon 300mm lens again. So in regards to the lenses, I've already mentioned one, the 300 f4. You can pick that up for around 220. It is f4, so it lets in a lot of light. It's a prime lens, so it should be nice and sharp. The other option with Nikon is probably the 70 to 300. So again, 300mm, but it's a little bit slower at 5.6 and probably not quite as sharp. However, if you want a zoom lens, that's definitely an option for you. All right, so let's have a look at Canon. And the first camera that pops to mind is the Canon 40D, mainly because it was my first camera that I ever used. It's around $60, it's 10 megapixels. It's pretty old, but I've always been blown away with the quality, especially when you pair it with a good lens. So I have used it with this 400 5.6, which is in the next bracket. It's not quite affordable. However, I just wanted to show you the shots you can get. And here's a yellow-billed spoonbill. The detail is sensational. We had this white-necked heron doing a flight shot. Again, smashed it with this camera. So you can definitely take good shots even with the oldest cameras. For me, I think the standout camera is the Canon 7D. I used this camera for a couple of years. It was 18 megapixels, 8 frames per second. It had weather sealing, it was built really well, it felt good, it had the joystick, just an awesome camera. And I took some of my favorite images with that camera. Again, I didn't have a real budget lens, I was using this 400 5.6, but it enabled me to get some shots such as this superb fairy wren, sort of surfing on the stick, curlews, you name it, I took lots of shots with that 7D. So what lens can we pair with the 7D in Canon? Well, there's one lens that stands out and a number of you suggested it. I haven't used it personally, but some of the photos that we're taking with it sort of speak for themselves, and that's the Canon 70-300 version 2. It's got updated autofocus, updated image stabilization. It's a really good lens and it's pretty affordable. It's $350 used. So the other lens worth considering for Canon, and it's an absolute bargain, is the Canon 55-250 STM. I think it's around $100 used, which is kind of crazy. Now, it won't work on a full frame camera. It's only going to work on your APS-C bodies, but that's fine. That's pretty much all we're getting in this budget category anyway. And it's going to give you around 400mm field of view. It's a little bit short, but should still be enough to get some cracking images. All right, so if I only had 500 and I had to buy one kit, it's probably going to be the Nikon D7000 and the Nikon 300 f4. I just think a nice fast prime on a really good quality camera is going to take really good shots. And I was so impressed with that rock wren that I'd love to get shots just like that. And let's now go to the exciting part. Let's have a look at the images that my beautiful subscribers submitted. And I just want to say that I was absolutely overwhelmed with the amount of images I received. I got over 245 images, and the images that I've selected are just subjective. It's just what I like. It's not that one image is better than another. It's just the image that jumped out at me for whatever reason, and those are the images that I've decided to share today. So let's start with an image that was just hard to ignore, and it captured my attention immediately. And it's this wonderful scene captured by Imre Gal on his Canon 7D, the Canon 35-350. He was on a school trip in Hungary to view the beautiful cranes. He took his father's camera with him, and it allowed this glorious shot. I think for me, the light and the inclusion of habitat make this very special. The second shot that just struck me due to its quality was this mountain scene captured by Isla Calab of some mountain goats grazing in the US. This was taken on the Nikon 90D and the Nikon 70-300, worth around $300. I thought the image quality was absolutely superb. I just loved the muted colors and the behavior that was captured. Well done. Speaking of budget, this wonderful sword-billed hummingbird image from Pia was actually taken on a $30 camera. The very, very old Canon 20D, only 8 megapixels from 2004. It's almost 20 years old, this camera, but I just love this image. What helped it though was the fantastic Canon 300 f4 IS. So the next image is from a camera system I don't have that much experience with, and that's Olympus. Johans took a shot of this mute swan in stunning light. The low angle, the setting, the water droplets really add to this photo. This shot by Nicholas of some puffins was captured on a Canon SX70HS. And there's nothing wrong with this image. The detail is fantastic. I like the pose, it all works. So it shows what's possible with those bridge cameras. So whilst I go on about needing focal length, you don't always have to have it. And Matt Detling proved this when he took an awesome portrait of a ringneck pheasant with a 50mm lens. He did say the bird was very inquisitive and must have come very close to allow this shot, but gee, it looks good to me. And here's another wide angle shot from Timu showing the beautiful king penguin with the wonderful mountains behind. I really do like these wide habitat scenes. And this was shot at 79mm on the Canon 18-135. And another image captured with the very same lens was actually from one of my younger subscribers. His name was Hugo. He's only 12 years old. He loves bird photography, and he managed to capture this beautiful gannet shot with a 70D and that 18-135. And lastly, for the budget section, Daniel proved that we can actually take a wildlife shot with around $20. He actually used the Canon PowerShot SX130 to capture this nice shot of a blue butterfly in Ukraine. So I think what these images show is that yes, you can definitely capture beautiful images on a budget. Hopefully it's motivation for you to get out with whatever camera you have. Okay, so it's time for the sub $1,000 bracket, and boy can we get some good gear in this bracket. There's almost too many to go over. I think it's important that we do focus on the lenses though, because there's some really good lenses in this price bracket. Again, we're talking about how fast is the lens, how much light does it let in, what's the IS like, what's the AF like, how much focal length do we have, what's the image quality, sharpness. We want a balance of all those things at an affordable price. And on the screen here are a number of lenses which we can get. The first one is the Sigma 150-600. I have used this lens extensively. I've done a test on it. I love this lens. For what it offers, about $600 used, about $900 brand new. Fantastic. It works on Sony, Canon, and Nikon, so you know, whatever brand you're using, you can get this lens. I think Nikon has their 200-500, a little bit more expensive at around $800 or $900 used. I haven't used that lens. Let me know in the comments if you've used the Sigma and the Nikon. What's the difference between them? Which one's better? the Tamron 150-600. For Canon, we've also got the amazing 400 5.6, which I've gone on and on and on about, my first birding lens. Love this lens, probably one of the sharpest lenses I've ever used, around $600 used. The shots that I've taken with this just blow my mind. This mulga parrot is just fantastic. You know, the amount of shots that I took with this lens is just incredible. It does lack IS, which is a bit of a bummer, so you have to have higher shutter speeds. It is only 400 millimeters, but it's so light. I think it's only about 1.2 kilos, so you can take bird and flight shots without an issue. And that weight is important. Like, this is almost 2 kilos, so it's quite hard to handhold that. We can also look at those other lenses now, the 300 f4 IS. We can still look at the 70 to 300 version 2, and there's lots of older lenses as well, but these are the ones that I would probably consider. In terms of cameras, we're now stepping it up. We can now start considering looking at maybe even the 70D and the 7D Mark II, the really awesome 1D Mark IV by Canon. That's a big body. It's 16 megapixels, 1.3 crop. It's a professional grade camera for around $450. So, you know, with Nikon, we're now looking at the 7100, the 7200, but we've got lots of options. For me personally, I'm looking at all this and I'm thinking, I want this lens. I want the 150-600. So it's going to be whatever camera I can get to suit this, which is going to fall in that budget. Ideally, I'd like, say, the 5D3 or the 7D2, but I think that's going to put us outside the $1,000. So again, I'm probably going to default to Nikon, maybe go with the D7200 and the Sigma 150-600. That's going to produce some really, really good images. Now, there's one kit that I haven't mentioned, and it's worth mentioning, is we can actually get mirrorless cameras in this price bracket. So you can probably start looking at the Z50 by Nikon, maybe the M50 by Canon. I don't have experience with these cameras, so I can't really comment on them, but some of the subscribers submitted some really awesome images on this gear. So let's have a look at those images now. So the first image I want to share is just this incredible shot of these ospreys taken by Andrew Wynett. I just love the behavior, this bird coming into land. It almost looks like it's attacking the other bird, but in fact, it's just trying to get into a position for mating. This was actually taken on the Nikon Z50 mirrorless camera with the 50 to 250 kit lens. Blown away by the quality in this one. Well done, Andrew. The next image, also with a mirrorless camera, was the Canon M50 taken by Simon. Fantastic flight shot of a black-capped chickadee. Love those background colors, love the pose. This was actually taken with the 70 to 300 version 2 I mentioned earlier. Just awesome. And Simon actually, interestingly, shared a shot taken with the R7 and the 150-600, so a lot more expensive. Same species, same flight shot, another really good quality shot. But what I took away was that with a bit of technique, you can get two very, very similar images at very different budgets. So well done, Simon, getting that shot with the budget gear. The next image that just made me smile was the behavior between a lioness and her cub. And this was actually captured in India of the Asiatic lion, so different to the African species. And I just love the behavior that Prayag Dave managed to capture on my favorite 400 5.6 lens. Well done. The next image is very unique and shows how staying around after the sun sets can actually result in some very interesting shots. Imre managed to get this warbler taken with the 70D and the 150-600 in the wetlands of Hungary. And there's something about it, there's something unique about it that just grabs your attention. Just love that image. Now, another image that just stood out to me was this mallard by Bryce Horn on the Nikon 7100 and the Tamron 150-600. I just love the light, the reflection, the water, so well done on that, Bryce. I also love seeing shots from young photographers, and the next one was actually by 15-year-old Oliver Adams, and he captured this young leopard with the 7D Mark II and that popular 70 to 300 lens. I just love those eyes. And we can also see at this budget level, when you have good light, you can really get some cracking detail. And Stuart Price shows this on the chestnut-cheeked starling 7D, the original 100 to 400, or this rosette spoonbill by Rodrigo, also on the 100 to 400, but with the older 40D. And lastly, this common kingfisher by Joshua, taken on an older Nikon D3200 on the Sigma 150-600. Okay, for one last shot, it was actually taken on some Sony gear, and it was a puff adder by Bram, taken on the Sony A68 and Sigma 50-500. Love that tongue coming out, love the detail, looks fantastic. So again, I'm blown away with the images we saw in this category. So budget 1,000, you can get some awesome cameras and lenses. I could have shared way more photos. I'm very confident at any gear in this price bracket is going to enable you to enjoy wildlife photography and get as good a shots as you saw today. Okay, so it's time for the sub $2,000 category, and this is overwhelming. There's just too many to choose from. Is it mirrorless? Is it DSLR, full frame, APS-C, Sony, Canon, Nikon? Which one do we go for? It's just so difficult to say. And for me, it's going to be very hard to go past the latest mirrorless tech from Canon. You can pick up the R7 and the RF 100-400 for less than $2,000 used, and this kit is incredible. It is so light. It's just over a kilo, 1.2 kilos. We get 100-400 millimeters, plus the 1.6 crop gives us a field of view of 640 millimeters. The IS is fantastic. The eye tracking of the camera is great. I mean, this is just a beautiful kit that everybody would have fun using, and I have fun using it. So for me, it's pretty hard to overlook this sort of setup. And you can also put on the Sigma 150-600. Yes, there's some autofocus issues, which I've touched on, video on that. We could use the 400 5.6. We can use all the older EF Canon lenses. And I just want to share a couple of images that I've actually taken with this R7, which just blow me away. So the first image that I actually took was actually with this Sigma 150-600 on the R7, and I got this amazing brown falcon shot. I love the combination. I love the two birds coming together, the behavior, just everything about it I really, really like. The second image, and probably one of my favorite images in the last year, was actually taken on my 400 5.6 on the R7, was of these backlit cormorants. There's just something about this image which appeals to me. I love it, and admittedly I did use the 1.4 converter, which pushes it over that $2,000 bracket, but it just goes to show what you can actually get with this Canon R7. So the beauty of secondhand gear is that you can now afford cameras that were once outside your price range. For me, it was the Canon 1DX. I think when it came out in Australia, it was about $7,000 or $8,000. Way too expensive. However, now you can pick this up used for around 800 US. You're getting an 18 megapixel full frame professional body with, I think it's 12 frames per second, built like a tank, will never let you down, creates beautiful images, and I'm just so happy that I've got this, and it just brings a smile to my face. So you can definitely get this. You can get the D4S, you know, you can get those professional bodies from Nikon as well, and pair them with one of these lenses, and away you go. All right, so we can also get the most popular DSLR for wildlife. What camera is that? Well, I asked my subscribers, they let me know what camera they thought was the best DSLR, and I've got a list on the screen here of the top 10. And number one was the Nikon D500. I think that had 27 submissions, just beating out the 7D Mark II. Why is the D500 so popular? Well, it just has amazing autofocus, the buffer's fantastic, the noise performance is really good for an APS-C, 20 megapixels, which is enough on an APS-C. You pair that with the Nikon 200-500, the Sigma 150-600, maybe even the 300 f4 PF, and you have got a fantastic kit that's going to be great for bird and flight, for wildlife, just an amazing camera. And it's also worth mentioning, possibly the best lens available is the Sony 200-600. That lens is incredible, it's so sharp. The issue for me is finding a body to put on it. I think that lens is around $1,400 to $1,600 used, and I haven't got a lot of experience with the Sony a6000 series. I've heard mixed reports about them, so I don't think it'll be any surprise to you that I'm always going to recommend the R7 and the RF 100-400. I think this kit just offers too much value in this price bracket, but if you want to have a lot of fun and you need more focal length, then the 1DX and the Sigma 150-600 is also an excellent choice. All right, so I could honestly go on and on about all this gear. However, let's take a look at these amazing images that were submitted in the sub $2,000 category. The first image was actually taken with the trusty Sigma 150-600, this time on one of Canon's first mirrorless cameras, the RP. This white rhino shot by Cyril is just amazing. It's very appealing. I think it's just the pure simplicity of it. You really get drawn into the image and you wonder, what is that rhino contemplating? I think the longer I look at this image, the more I love it. So well done, Cyril. The next shot from Surajit is from the wonderful Canon 5D Mark III on the trusty 400 5.6. I really like the color in this. I like the pose. I like the setting. Overall, it just works. The next photo was actually taken with the exact same kit, but by a different photographer. Sachin's actually taken a shot of the stag. You can see just the light, the quality of the light, the color, the setting, the stag, everything works together to produce a really nice image. The next shot, which stands out, is this incredible hummingbird by Zachary. The detail that was captured in this is just phenomenal. I love the color. It was used on the Canon 90D, and again, the Sigma, which is very popular, the 150-600. Shot that I want to share highlights what wildlife photography is all about. So Ben only got into wildlife photography last year in 2021, but he got hooked like many of us are. But he found some young pups to photograph and actually spent a number of days and even weeks following and tracking these foxes, which enabled him to get this shot of a young pup relaxing on a rock with its foot up. I just love the eye contact in this, and it shows what's possible after a little bit of hard work in a very short amount of time. So well done, Ben. Next up is this stunning oriental dwarf kingfisher, captured with that incredible Sony 200-600 and coupled with the A6300. Absolutely fantastic. I love how the bird just absolutely pops with those amazing colors, the little bit of food in the bill, dark background, it just really makes this image pop. So well done, Nicole, on that one. And another shot actually taken on Sony gear is this sword-billed hummingbird by Mark Knoll. And Mark tells me that this is the only bird whose bill is actually longer than their body, which is pretty incredible and taken in the wilds of Ecuador. And another image is this very unique image of a green heron. Loved the reflection, loved the setting. This was taken by Jason Crawley on the 80D and Sigma 150-600. I laughed when reading the info on this because Jason had told his wife he was on his way back to the car, she's waiting for him, and he spots this bird and then gets completely sidetracked for a good half an hour or so and then made his way back to the car. I'm not sure what his wife was thinking when he got there, but I think we can all relate to that story. I must admit, I love a good flight shot, and Tiago really nailed this whiskered turn, fully banking, and Mark Hayward nailed this red-tailed hawk lifting off. Just love the action in these shots. And the next one, I might be a little bit biased here, but I just love the interaction between these two sulphur-crested cockatoos that Emmanuel was able to capture. Just such a tender moment. And this was actually taken on the Canon mirrorless M6 Mark II and the 100-400. And often in wildlife, what can be a real challenge is getting the balance between habitat and subject. And I think Williams struck a great balance here with this Cooper's hawk sitting in a pine tree. It just works for me. And the last image in this category shows off just how sharp modern lenses are. This portrait of an American black duck taken on the Canon R10 and RF 100-400 is just incredible. So thanks for sharing that, Matt. So what an incredible series of images to finish up on. I'm going to share some more images at the end of this video because I couldn't fit them all in there. Again, thank you to everyone who shared their images. So after looking at a couple of hundred images, what became apparent to me is that the camera and the lens are just a tool. And it's the photographer who uses these tools in a combination with the light, the composition, the subject, that enables you to get wonderful photos. And it doesn't matter what brand it is, Canon, Nikon, Sony, they all take amazing photos. It's up to us as photographers to practice and harness this tool and just get out there and have a lot of fun. And if you do that, your images will definitely improve. And to think some of the best shots taken today were on cameras that cost less than a modern memory card. So I don't think there's any excuse for not grabbing some sort of gear and getting out there and taking some shots. So what else this video showed is that the choice for us as consumers is overwhelming. There are just so many cameras and lenses. And I think the best advice I can give you is, what style do you employ? Do you walk around in the bush looking for birds, or do you sit in a hide with a tripod? The weight of the kit will have a huge impact on how much you enjoy photography and what you get out of it. If you just walk around in the bush, this lens at 2 kilos and this camera at 1.2 kilos, it's almost just too much, and you're going to need a tripod or a monopod, and it might be just too hard. However, if you walk around, you can pick up, say, a very light lens like the 70-300, the 400 5.6. It's just going to make your life much easier because it's much, much lighter. You know, do you shoot in low light? If you shoot in low light, maybe one of those faster f4 lenses or a full frame camera is going to help you. If you can't get anywhere near the birds, maybe a 600 lens would help you. So you've got to take all these things into consideration to ultimately choose what's right for you. I also want to share with you why I chose the images that I chose. So basically, I was drawn to images that showed something a little bit different. An image that told a story, that held my attention. It was often the light, the behavior, the composition that really drew me in, and a combination of these things. For example, when I look at this white rhino image, I just can't stop looking at it. It's the balance of that light and composition and subject that drew me in. I challenge you to ask yourself why you like certain images more than others. Try to figure out why you like a certain image over another one, and then you can adapt your style to try to capture images like that. We're all different, we're not all going to like the same thing. So it's important we try to pursue what interests us. And for me, I'm really loving habitat and behavior at the moment. So I'm going to try in the next year or two to incorporate that into my photography, because that's what my goal, I guess. And I challenge you to do the same thing. So I really hope you got some value out of today's video. Let me know in the comments which images you loved. I liked a lot of them. And let me know what gear you think is the best budget value gear for 2023. If you want to support me directly and help me making these videos, you can become a paying member. It costs less than a cup of coffee per month, and it really does assist me. And thanks to all my current members, you get a cool little bird next to your name. That's how you know if you're a member or not. If you want to make a one-off donation, you can hit that super thanks button. Again, directly supports me. And I really can't stress how happy I am with our community, and I'm looking forward to the further videos we're going to create. So until the next one, take care. See you later.